Greetings, fellow humans. I'm MartianBuu, and today we're going to talk about the Showdown in the Badlands mini set Delve into Deepholm. As of today, all of the cards have been revealed, so we can finally talk about what their impact is going to be like on, Wild and Standard. Without further ado, let's get right into it. So our first look into the mini set was with some neutral cards and some warrior cards. We have the long-awaited Therazane, the fourth of the elemental lords like Ragnaros and Neptulon. How good is Therazane? So 7 mana, 7/5 elemental, taunt, death rattle, double the stats of all elementals in your hand and deck. Especially considering the existence of Lorthamar, I'm pretty skeptical. This has less stats, its effect triggers on a death rattle, which is awful. It also doesn't hit things that aren't elementals. The upside of this card, comparing it to Lorthamar, is the fact that it hits your hand and it also has taunt. But it has a taunt with a pretty small body and expensive to get out. I don't think that's really even a factor. Overall, I think it's pretty bad. Maybe it'll pop up in something throughout the upcoming standard year, but certainly not wild. Maybe there's some kind of you could cheat out a death rattle and get some payoff on it, but elementals don't have charge. I guess there is the charged Devilsaur, but I don't know. It's all very gimmicky. Then we have the card that I'm probably the most excited about, which is Deep Miner Brand. So it's a 6 mana 2/4 battle cry. If your deck has no duplicates, your battle cries trigger twice for the rest of the game. This is absolutely nutty with Astalor. So if you've played this, then anytime in the future when you play baby Astalor, you get 2 mid Astalors. You play mid, you get 2 big Astalors, and your big Astalors all do 28 damage without requiring a brand on the field or anything. So that alone, I think, is enough synergy for Reno Warrior to be a real thing. And the fact that all of that is even makes me think that the new best build of Even Warrior is going to be a Reno Even Warrior. Before you say anything, this does not work with Odin. They changed how Odin works with multipliers a few weeks ago, probably in preparation for Deep Miner Brand. Multiple Odins do not stack. You will not get more armor damage out of your armor cards if you've played Odin after Brand. But Brand is so good with Astalor, especially Dry Whisker armor, Galvangar, there's so much stuff that Reno Even Warrior would play that benefits from this. Astalor Deep Miner specifically is so good that I feel like you can run a not even Reno Warrior and have it be good. So I think the win condition is just ridiculously broken. So very good card. I imagine in both formats I expect it to get nerfed in some way. So then we have some Warrior Demon Hunter dual class cards. We are getting dual class back for this mini set. That is a throwback to dual class being in Festival of Legends, because the third mini set of the year is always a throwback to the whole year. I would hope that moving forward we're going to see dual class in all the mini sets, but I don't expect it. It just fits so well, right? Because there are so many fewer cards, and having dual class in the mini sets just means that more cards are playable in more places. It's a more significant update. So anyways, we have a location, Crimson Expanse, which is choose a damaged minion, summon a copy of it that goes dormant for 1 turn. So this is a 4/2 location. It is playable and even, but I don't know that you'd want to. I guess what you'd want to do with this is play it in advance, then play a charge minion and use Inner Rage on it and go face, and then Crimson Expanse it so that you get to play another one next turn. But it just seems really clunky. I don't think you would build that other than just for the fun of it. So Burning Heart is a 1 mana fire spell that deals 2 damage to a minion, and if it survives, your hero gets +3 attack this turn. I feel like this is 1 mana for 3 attack this turn that requires an awkward stipulation. I don't imagine Demon Hunter is going to get a lot of value out of that deal 2 damage to a minion. And in Warrior, this would just go in an Inner Rage deck, but it deals 2 damage instead of 1 damage, so it's harder to put it on a minion. See, I think it's a bit of an awkward card, but it is cheap damage, so maybe it'll find a spot somewhere. So another thing to note, there's going to be a big Excavate update with this mini set. Much like when cards got added to the Lackey pool over the course of the Year of the Dragon, the Excavate pool is getting new cards. So these 3 cards aren't collectible, they're just new discoveries within Excavate. So a common discovery, Heart Blossom, for 1 mana, you give a friendly minion +2/+2, and then it deals 2 damage to a random enemy minion. Seems okay. Then Deepholm Geode, 2 for 1/2 elemental. At the end of your turn, deal 2 damage to all enemies. That seems really good. And then World Pillar Fragment, 3 for discover an elemental to summon and add the others to your hand. So that's just a lot of value and a lot of quick tempo. The 3 mana Excavate cards all have seemed really strong, so this is right up there with them. So for some more neutrals, we have Stone Drake, which is a 6 for 2/8 elemental dragon, divine shield, taunt, lifesteal, can't be targeted by spells or hero powers. This is a lot of keywords on it, but it's also a 6 mana 2/8, so I'm not really sure what's happening with this. I could see a world where like hand buff stuff really values this in standard, especially because it can't be targeted by spells or hero powers. And maybe it's just a really good hit off of the stuff that summons an elemental. There's that Excavate card and there's another one coming up. But yeah, no impact on wild, I imagine. Then we have Shale Spider, 2 for 3/2 elemental. If you've played an elemental last turn, draw a card. Seems all right for an elemental deck, so like elemental mage in wild is pretty decent. I think this would slot into there pretty easily. Fun fact, these are beasts in World of Warcraft, so I don't know why this one isn't a beast. Then we have Iridescent Gaiaworm, 3 for 4/3 elemental. Death Rattle, give each of your minions a random bonus effect. That has a death rattle, not a battle cry, so I imagine it's not very good. Then we have Marut Stonebinder, which is another Highlander card. 7 mana, 5/6, battle cry. If your deck has no duplicates, discover an elemental to summon, add the others to your hand. I do think this is a bit boring, but I imagine in standard it's going to be pretty impactful. It's just a lot of stats. So you play this, you get a 5/6, and then you pick whatever the biggest elemental you discovered, maybe it's Ragnaros, and get 2 cards to play later. So I think it's just like a solid card in a Highlander good stuff pile. Will it be good in wild? I don't think so. The most similar card to this, I think, is Dragon Queen Alexstrasza, which granted is 2 more mana, but it's the same vibe as this card, right? Like basically just a giant stat pile. It's not like removing the board or guaranteed burst damage or anything like that. So I just think that those type of effects are a bit too low impact and wild nowadays. Then we have some Demon Hunter and Rogue cards. So first up, just for Demon Hunter, we have Fell Fissure, which is a 4 mana Fell spell that deals 2 damage to all minions, and at the start of your next turn, deals 2 more damage to all minions. So for 4 total damage. I think this card is fantastic, but unlikely to see much play in wild. I don't think the Demon Hunter class in wild is built to take advantage of cards like this. So you would want to build like a Reno Demon Hunter or something like that, something where you would want to stall for a little bit of time to play a bigger card later. And most of the good Demon Hunter decks in wild are just about using the quest line to draw a bunch of cards and play a lot of stats for cheap, and this certainly doesn't fit there. But what's really cool about it is getting to clear up front and then making it hard for your opponent to develop again coming back to your turn. So I think it's a really solid card. If you did want to build like a Reno Demon Hunter, you'd probably almost always play this. Then we have Quick Pick, which is like one of the best cards for both Demon Hunter and Rogue this set. It's a little hard to see, but it is a dual class Rogue card. So 2 mana, 1/2. After your hero attacks, draw a card. Really solid. 2 for draw 2, gives you a weapon, gives you 2 damage. You can put damage bonuses on it. You can use the 1 for 1/1 minion that gives a durability to let you swing again. Pretty interesting card. Probably just going to get played in Questline Demon Hunter as a 2 for 1/2 that draws 2. But there's a lot of fun stuff to toy around with in Rogue. Then we have Shadestone Skulker, which is a 1 for 1/1 elemental. Rush, battle cry, take your weapon and gain its stats. Death Rattle, give it back. So this is another dual class Demon Hunter Rogue card, but I don't really see it in either. I think a lot of people are seeing Kingsbane when they see this, but we already have Prize Plunderer, which is better in a lot of situations, and this would just be a Prize Plunderer that doesn't work unless your Kingsbane is big. And it's not like it gives you back the weapon fresh again. It gives it back to you in the state it was when you took it. So you're not going to get an extra swing out of your Kingsbane when you do this, and I don't think it triggers Death Rattles. It just takes the weapon, right? Like Sticky Finger takes the weapon. So yeah, it could be an interesting clear in the right deck, but I'm having trouble imagining what that deck looks like right now. Then we have Fool's Gold. For 1, it's get a random Golden Pirate and Elemental from other classes. So this is just a rogue only card. What we learned from Shell Game is that it's really good to discount Null and Obsidian Shard with above rate Burgle cards. So like Shell Game gives you 3 Burgle cards for 2, and that was a huge game changer. Now this is giving you 2 Burgle cards for 1, which is also way above rate. So it's going to make it really easy to discount Null and an Obsidian Shard, and then if any of those cards are actually playable, you can play them and activate your Velorok. That's the context that I see this thing play in Wild. As far as this being a good enough card for Standard, I'm not sure. It's going to depend on what those pools look like for Pirates and Elementals, because they have to actually play these cards, right? But it is above rate card advantage, so maybe it is really good in Standard too. Then we have Hidden Gem, which is a dual class Rogue and Priest card, a 2 for 2/2 Elemental with Stealth. At the end of your turn, restore 2 health to all friendly characters. In Standard, I imagine this is going to be really good because they still have Clergy. They have like an overheal deck that's coming together, and this adds another solid piece to that. It's also interesting to give a healing card to Rogue. They haven't had one in a long time. I think the last one was like Leeching Poison. But this is Stealth, not Stealth for a turn. So you can just play this on 2 and leave it there to heal you turn after turn after turn after turn. How good is that? I'm not sure, but it's to all friendly characters, so it allows you to trade up in both of those classes and then heal your face and your minions that traded. I think this is a really nutty card. It might be the type of nutty where it's just not up to the task with modern Hearthstone, but I feel like it's so good it's bound to find a spot in at least one of those classes, if not both. Then we have Shadow Word Steel, Rogue, Priest, dual class Shadow spell. For 5 mana, you return an enemy minion to your hand. Return there is a little awkward because it didn't start in your hand, right? It can't return to a place it hasn't been. But the idea is to signify that you are taking it from your opponent's side of the field and putting it in your hand. So it's like Entomb, except a mana cheaper, and instead of going into your deck, it goes into your hand. I do think this is a really good card. It might be that 5 mana single target removal is just not up to the task in Wild. So like Reno Priest is where I would see this seeing play. But so many of the opponents don't have a target you actually want to hit with this, and it costs so much mana that it's pretty much going to be the type of card that you see at like lower MMR where people are playing a ton of goofy Highlander decks. In Standard though, the games do tend to go that late and there do tend to be targets, so I imagine people are going to hate this in Standard. So hopefully I finish up my 1k Death Knight grind soon so that I can start jamming some Control Priest and enjoy this before it potentially gets changed due to bad feelings. Next up we have Glowstone Gyreworm, Priest only card, 4 for 4/4 Elemental with Lifesteal, Quick Draw, deal 5 damage, and Forge, change Quick Draw to Battlecry. So this is the first Forge card that's actually good as a top deck, right? So you can either play it the turn you draw it and get its bonus effect, or you can use it to activate your Ignis and then play it whenever it suits you. I think this card is exceptionally strong for Standard. Is it good enough for Wild? Maybe. We haven't really experimented with playing the Forge package in Reno Priest because you can only run the neutral one if you're playing Benedictus. But now you have the neutral one and this one to activate Ignis, so it could be that those are good enough as a healing package for Shadow Reno Priest now. Really solid card. I expect to see a lot of it in Standard. Then we have Pendant of Earth, which is bonkers. So this is a 3 mana nature spell for Priest and Druid. Discover a minion from your deck, gain armor equal to its cost. So the first thing I thought of when I saw this was Crypt Keeper. So Crypt Keeper costs 8. It's a 4/6 taunt that's discounted by your armor. So if you're running a deck with very few minions in it and Crypt Keepers, you're going to be able to play this on 3 to get a 4/6 taunt for free and 8 armor. So it's like Oaken Summons but a turn earlier against aggro, which will be really strong. I imagine we see it in those decks a lot, but it's also like in a more quote-unquote fair way, it's just a good minion tutor that allows you some survivability. So you play this on 3 in Druid and you pick like your A&R, you got to get a really impactful minion and you also gain 10 armor. If you're running a specific combo deck that requires things like Isiel or Anacondra, you get to go find that minion easily and also gain some survivability. Same thing goes for like Auctioneer Druid, which has been pretty yucky since it lost Cold Tooth Mine. Since Tony was changed and we had to switch to Togwaggle, you can't guarantee that you can hit the Auctioneer off of Cold Tooth Mine anymore. So now as long as your only minions are like Auctioneer, Togwaggle, and Barnes, you can always get the Auctioneer with this, and you get some survivability in the process instead of just skipping the turn. So I imagine that deck becomes a little better again with the help of this and other decks like it. And then you can also consider with Naga Giant going solar and this and gaining 40 armor and just being able to pass a bunch of turns in a row against aggro. So there's a lot of potential with this in Druid. As far as Priest goes, I don't know, because it's probably still better to go Shadow Reno Priest. But it does give you a nature spell to run in your deck if you wanted to run like Multicaster, like a build like that I've tried before, and it's, you know, it's whatever. But even then, I think in Priest, you're probably going to want this for its tutor effect more than building around the armor. And the armor will just be a nice upside. So I think this will probably pop up in not Reno Priest decks. I've heard like Miracle Giants Priest talked about. So you would play like the Grave Horrors and Arcane Giant. Play this, get a giant, gain 12 armor. It helps keep you up before the Radiant Elemental pop off turn. Switcheroo made that deck real. It just needed some more minion tutor. So maybe this is enough. It replaces the second draw with some armor gain. Then we have Shattered Reflections. So for 5 mana, you choose a minion, add a copy to your hand, deck, and battlefield, and this is a priest/druid card. So at first glance, this is Sathrovar that costs 5 instead of 9. Granted, it's not tutorable with Juicy Psych Melon, and if you're using Aviana for that combo, this is actually more expensive than Sathrovar, but it would give you that type of play, right? So you could play Malagos and then copy the Malagos and do a bunch of damage. There are a ton of combos with this in Wild, but I don't think that there's any combo deck that you could play with this where it's going to be better than the kind of stuff that we're already doing with Bran Astalor or Auctioneer Togwaggle. Where this is going to see a ton of play, I think, is in Standard, possibly in both classes, and it's going to be really annoying. So if you think about reverberations, you can't play a Titan in Standard against Mage or Warlock without expecting your opponent to get a copy of it and then kill your copy with their copy. This lets you target enemy minions, so it's not like Sathrovar where you have to pick your own. You can just pick your opponent's Titan, use its effect to get rid of it, and then you have another copy of your opponent's Titan in your hand and in your deck. So it's just an insane value card in Standard, I think. Granted, it's not like Reverberations where it makes it so that you can kind of ping off the target, and it does cost 2 more, but I think Standard is slow enough to where this is just kind of a win con against slower decks. Next up, we have Gloomstone Guardian, which is a 4 mana 6/8 taunt elemental with choose one, discard 2 cards, or destroy one of your mana crystals. Both are bad unless you're running a discard deck. And then you have Forged to do neither. So the idea is you forge this and then you get its effect. Hooray. The other cool thing about this is you could run it with Oaken Summons. So it's like worse stats than Injured Marauder, obviously, but unlike Injured Marauder, if you draw it, you can forge it and still play it, and it's like less stupid. I do think we got cheaper Oaken Summons that doesn't require you not to run Splish Splash, Whelp, or Zephyrus, so I can't imagine Oaken Summons is going to make a resurgence just because of this. And even then, it's probably still better with just Injured Marauder. So will this find a spot anywhere? I doubt it. Like, who wants to play a 4 mana 6/8 taunt in Wild? I don't. Is that good enough for Standard? Maybe if you want to activate Forged energies. And now that I've said that, maybe this is enough for like Reno Warlock to run Ignis, now that you can run this and the neutral good one, because the other Forge one was not so great. But I'm still not happy to do it, right? Like 4 mana 6/8 taunt, if this just didn't have any other text, I'm still not interested. Then we have Trog Gem Tosser. So 3 for 3/2 Finale, deal 1 damage to a random enemy for each of your mana crystals. And before we talk about this more, I need to remind you that Finale is not Battlecry. Bran doubles Battlecries, not Finales. So you cannot play this with Bran and expect it to do a lot of damage once you've played Guff. It is still kind of interesting, so you could play Thaddeus in Druid, and then play 2 of these and Zola and play another one, or play 2 of these, then play Bran Zola, because it does double the Zola effect, to add 2 more of these and then, you know, play those. So you could do the funny Guff OTK if you really wanted to, using Thaddeus to trigger Finale. But again, I don't think that's better than anything we're currently doing in Druid. Then we have Crystal Cluster, which is a 6 mana spell just for Druid that gains 3 empty mana crystals, and any that can't fit, summon a 3/7 elemental with taunt. So if you play this on 10, it's 6 mana for 3/3/7 taunts, which isn't too bad. I think in Wild, we're already ramping so hard that we don't need this, and we have Guff, so a lot of the time when Standard is capped out, we still have a lot of ramp to go. So I don't think this is going to be a Wild card. Is this going to be a Standard card? Even then, I'm not sure. 6 mana seems like a lot, but it's pretty good once you're capped, and maybe they value ramping from 6 straight to 10, so I don't know. It's hard to tell. Maybe if Nourish rotates out of the core set this time around. Then we have some Warlock cards. All right, so Elementium Geode, 2 for 2/1 Elemental, Battlecry and Death Rattle, draw a card, deal 2 damage to your hero. So this is like Kobold Librarian, except there's 2 of them. You get the 2 for 2/1, you know, it's twice the mana for the same effect. Battlecry, draw a card, deal 2 damage to your hero. But when it dies, you also deal 2 damage to your hero and draw a card. This is not as good as Kobold Librarian for Questline Warlock, but I do think it's probably good enough for that deck. The fact that the second one is on a Death Rattle is a bit of a toughie, because if you can't destroy it on your turn, your opponent can activate it on their turn, and then it doesn't count towards your quest. But that deck is already playing like Plague of Flames and Dark Pact, right? So a lot of the time when you play this, you're going to be destroying it the same turn. So I do think that it's good enough. It's probably better than Backfire, for example. And another nice thing to get back with Raised Dead. Chaos Creation, 6 mana fell spell for Warlock and Mage. Deal 6 damage, summon a random 6 cost minion, destroy the bottom 6 cards of your deck. In Standard Sludge Warlock, this is going to be doing more than 6 damage because it's going to discard all of your sludges that are on the bottom of the deck. Maybe it'll draw you some cards too with Furnace Fuel, but it's kind of a Firelands Portal that's a little bit better. And I don't think Firelands Portal that's a little bit better is that great. In Mage, it's nice to have access to a Fel spell. It helps with like Sif and the board clear that wants you to play a lot of different class spells. But in a Sif deck, do you really want to be destroying the bottom 6 cards of your deck? If it hits Sif, you're sad. I guess it depends how important Sif is. So obviously in Wild, I think this card is garb. And maybe it's good enough for Standard, especially earlier in the year. Like maybe if this isn't good right out the gate, it ends up being good early on. Hard for me to tell. Then we have Soul Freeze, which I think is the actual big upgrade to Questline Warlock. 1 mana frost spell, freeze a minion and its neighbors, and then deal damage to your hero equal to the number frozen. So this is Frost Nova for Warlock that costs 2 less and advances your quest. So if you thought that Quest Warlock was obnoxious before, throw in a little bit of Quest Mage and now you're really going to enjoy it. I could also see like a deck full of board clears not really valuing the freeze as much, but I do think that it's good. Quest Mage spends a lot of time at 1 health because of Ice Block, and so I'm not sure that you see this main board. In fact, I'm pretty confident you don't. But 1 mana Nova seems pretty good to me, so maybe especially in the Arena version it could find a spot, but I'm not holding my breath. Then for Mage, we have Summoning Ward, 3 mana secret. When your turn starts, summon a copy of your highest cost minion. I do think if Secret Mage weren't hot trash, that this would be a good card in it, because you get this and then you get to summon a 6/5 or a 6/6. And maybe not, but unfortunately Blackie was deleted, so I don't imagine that this sees much play outside of randomly generating it in Standard. Then we have Mantle Shaper, which is dual class Mage and Hunter. It's a 5/5 elemental Naga that costs 1 less for each spell you've cast while holding it. Especially in Mage, I think this is pretty easy to get out real fast. I could definitely see a Mage deck being built to get out a bunch of these and maybe some Arcane Giants, if not immediately, then eventually. For Hunter, I'm less sure. It does have a lot more spells than it used to, and this is odd, and we're getting another odd questline this expansion. So Questline Hunter could try to play this, but even then I'm not sure. You know, 5 is a lot for that type of deck. You're casting like 2 to 3 max in a turn with that early game. Maybe if Twin Fire or whatever that card was called, Rapid Fire, got unnerved, this could be good, but I don't really see it in Hunter. In Wild anyway. I bet you in Standard this is going to be good in both classes. Then for Mage and Hunter, we have Elemental Companion, which is 3 for summon a random Elemental Companion. So we have 3 for 4/4 Elemental Misho, can't be targeted by spells or hero powers. 3 for 4/2 Elemental Hifar, your spells cost 1 less. And 3 for 2/4 Elemental Luek, spell damage +2. So I could see a deck being built to take advantage of both Luek and Hifar, and this being really good. But the problem is 33% of the time you get Misho, and you don't care about that at all. Like, it's so bad. So anyways, if it was just a toss up between Luak, Hifar, and something else similar, I would say that this card is pretty good for standard at least. But since it's not, I don't really imagine seeing it outside of random generation. Then we have Hunter. So Shimmer Shot, 1 mana arcane spell, deal 1 damage, summon a random minion of that cost. Especially if Theldurin gets unnerved at rotation, I could definitely see this seeing play in Wild. It would be in a questline Hunter deck, so it's going to depend on if we can make questline Hunter work. It is odd, and we have a few more odd cards for that deck now, so it could be that it's good enough to see some play. I am kind of looking forward to trying it, even just as 1 for deal 1, summon a random 1 cost. I think it's good enough for those type of decks, because we used to run Wound Prey and On the Hunt in odd questline Hunter. Then we have Mismatched Fossils, 3 for Discover a Beast and an Undead, swap their stats. Discover does not give you a bonus for your class anymore, so you're discovering doo-doo neutrals a lot of the time. I think this card's pretty bad. It's going to seem really broken when you hit Snowflipper, Penguin, and Thaddeus in standard, and then just get to drop a 0 mana 11/11 in the same turn you play this. But like as a main deck card, I'm not seeing it. Then we have Obsidian Revenant, also for Hunter and Death Knight. So 6 mana, 4/6 elemental, taunt, Death Rattle, summon 2 random Death Rattle minions that cost 3 or less. This card sickens me. Let's never look at it again. Moving on to Death Knight and Paladin, we have Quartzite Crusher, 4 mana 3/3 blood and frost rune weapon with lifesteal, freeze any character damaged by your hero. So this is another dual rune card, which I might be finally coming around on conceptually, because while they've been printing a lot of dual rune cards that just aren't going to see play in a meta that's dominated by triple rune cards, they haven't printed a triple rune card since Climactic Necrotic Explosion. So if they've moved away completely from printing triple rune cards, or almost completely at least, and are going to start printing more cards that have multiple runes on them, it's going to be a lot easier to build around those decks because the power is going to be distributed into less restrictive costs. A card costing 3 runes is the most restrictive cost, and 2 runes, even if they're different colors, is less restrictive than that. It's just kind of been, because of the initial triple rune cards, it's been hard to fit them in decks whose power is so reliant on those triple rune cards. So anyways, all I'm saying is, looking at standard post rotation, if no new triple rune cards get printed, Death Knight is probably going to be a lot more open deck building wise, even if most cards end up having multiple rune colors on them. That was my long way of saying, like, I've decided not to be depressed about seeing another dual rune card. But this one's really good, right? Like, if you're playing a Climactic Necrotic Explosion deck, you're running 2 of these, unless it's a Reno version, in which case you run just 1. But like, it's really good. You play 4 for 3 through weapon, already pretty decent, and then you get lifesteal on it, and you freeze anything hit by it. So if your opponent is playing a attack with their hero deck, you just get to keep petting face, and they can't actually hit you for 3 turns in a row. So I don't know. This seems really good to me. Right now, I only see it in Rainbow Death Knight, and only in standard obviously, but given enough time we could see it pop up in Wild, and maybe in a just Blood Frost. It seems like a really good card. Then we have Prosthetic Hand, which is a 3 for 3/1 mech, magnetize, reborn, and it can magnetize on mechs or undead in both Death Knight and Paladin. Don't really see this in Death Knight with the current hand buff options in Death Knight. Is this better than the other magnetic options in Paladin for Wild? Not really seeing it with Mech Warper gone. Could probably see this seeing some play in Wild Mech Paladin if Mech Warper hadn't been banned. Even then though, Reborn isn't that exciting for Wild, right? We want like Rush but mostly Charge. Then we have a card that I actually do think we'll see some play in Wild, which is Mining Casualties. So 2 for summon 2 1/1 Silverhand recruits with Death Rattle, summon a 1/1 Frail Ghoul, which is the ghoul from the Death Knight hero power. So you play this on 2, you get 2 1/1s, who cares? But the Death Rattle gives you 1/1 chargers, and while it does say at the end of your turn this minion dies, it's the end of your turn. So if your opponent clears the 1/1s on their turn, it's not like you miss out on ghouls. And then this is 2 for 4 corpses, and unlike, Plague DK in standard, Triple Unholy even Plague DK does value corpses, so for Grave Strength and for Marrowgar. So yeah, 2 for 4 corpses and some decent bodies I think is actually pretty good, and definitely makes the cut in even Shaman Death Knight in Wild, which I do think is slightly better than it's been recently. Now on to some real spicy stuff. Shaman and Paladin are gaining Excavate this time around. These cards are the legendary Excavate treasure for those classes. They are not collectible. You can't just put these in a deck. But for Shaman, we have the Azerite Murloc, which is a 4-mana 5/5 elemental Murloc. Transform all your other minions into ones that cost 3 more, keeping their original costs. So the text is pretty vague, but it is confirmed this is all of your minions wherever they are. So we're missing that wherever they are on here. It does hit your hand, it does hit your deck. So I actually think that this is a really yucky Excavate payoff. It makes me instantly not excited to play it. There is a really good Excavate payoff that we're about to talk about for Shaman that is minion based. So if you haven't played that yet and you play this, you've lost your payoff. And then all the stuff is random, right? So it is discounted, which is nice, but now your deck is just Deck of Lunacy. So I think if you want to play like funny, silly, funny Excavate Shaman in standard, that this will be all right and exciting for you. But it also turns the neutral Excavate enablers like the Kobold and the Drill into random minions. So it's not like you're going to get to be able to do multiples of these or anything. Like once you've excavated 4 times, you're done if you play this. So anyways, I think that this is a really boring payoff. It looks really funny, but it's just not my type of card. Maybe if you're a memer, you're really excited for this, or maybe you see something I don't. The pool of minions is a lot shallower in standard, so I think this has some potential to at least be fun for its own sake, but I don't think it'll be good. This Paladin one though, the Azerite Dragon, 4 for 5/5 elemental dragon. Give all of their minions in your hand, deck, and battlefield +3/+3. That seems really strong to me. If you had anything already on the field, it's getting buffed. If you have anything in your hand, it's huge. If you have, everything in your deck is big too. I think this is actually a really strong payoff. It might be a little linear, so it might be a little less exciting just compared to some of the other funny payoffs in the other classes, but I do think it'll be good. Now here we have the real reason to play Excavate, at least in Paladin. So 3 for 2/3 Murloc, Battlecry. If you've excavated twice, transform all enemy minions into 1/1 Murlocs. So this is Sir Finley. We've now hit all 4 of the League of Explorers this set. So yeah, that's a one-sided mass polymorph on a 3-mana minion. Pretty good. The problem with this in Shaman is obviously if you play the 4-mana treasure, it turns this into a random thing. You don't get to use it. And if you don't pay it, then you've generated a 4 for 5/5 that you never play. It's like you got to skip an Excavate. It would have been better just to go back to 1. So I'm not really looking at this in Shaman, but I mean, you would play it, right? Like, it's not like you're not going to play this if you're building your deck that way in Shaman, but I'm not like excited about it. In Paladin though, you don't have to turn your whole deck into Bungus. So 3 for 2/3 one-sided board clear does seem pretty good if you're building Excavates. So like in standard, I think this is going to be really strong at least, but the big Excavate card for Wild actually doesn't really care about excavating. I'm going to start on the right this time. Shroomskavate. So 3 for give a minion Wind Fury and Divine Shield, and you excavate a treasure. This is a Paladin Shaman dual class card, and it is just ridiculous to give main deck Wind Fury to Paladin so cheaply. Paladin makes really big threats really easily and buffs them to be even bigger threats really easily with like Garden's Grace. So we're just going to be seeing people's entire health deleted by Wind Fury in Paladin. I expect this card to see a lot of play in like aggro Paladin to do lots of damage with your itty bitty mini guys. But it also does seem like a really good Excavate card. So in standard, I imagine they're going to hate this too. And it's going to be a good way to advance your Excavate to get your good dragon payoff. Then we have Needle Rock Totem, 2 for 0/2 Shaman Warrior Totem. At the end of your turn, gain 2 armor and draw a card. Obviously, this goes straight into even Shaman, does not pass go. Like, you just get so much value out of this, and it's nice to have the survivability too, I guess. But it's monetized totem, but even Shaman can actually play it and protect it and keep their value coming. One of the big weaknesses of even Shaman is the fact that they can run out of resources, and this is just going to make it harder for them to run out of those resources. Then we have Digging Straight Down. So 4 for 8 damage to a minion, excavate a treasure, nature spell for Shaman. This is a spell, so like Shroomskavate, it's not going to get deleted by the Murloc Excavate payoff, but I'm still not excited about it. It's 4 for DLA to a minion. It's not like that great of a card. I imagine this gets played in every Excavate Shaman, but it's not like, you're excited to do it. Then we have Aftershocks, Shaman warrior card, 4 mana nature spell, deal 1 damage to all minions 3 times, cost 2 less if you cast a spell last turn. So this is even, which is significant because even warrior is already good and its Merino version is about to get a lot better. And both of those decks run a lot of spells. So you got like Bash and Shield Block and Minefield and Blade Storm and, you know, like all kinds of stuff like that. Even with greedy partners now, you have the coins. So the likelihood you're going to be able to play one of your 2 mana spells on 2 and then play Aftershocks plus Hero Power on 3 is pretty high. And if you remember from the brief time period where Even Warrior got to play Sanitize, having 4 really solid complete board clears was really good in Even Warrior. So you like never lost to Even Shaman or Shadow Priest or anything like that because you would always have a good clear. So I do think that this gets played in that deck. Is it good in Shaman? Not sure. It is a nature spell, so you can find it, but like I don't think you would play it in Shutterwalk Shaman. It's very, very minion heavy, so it's going to be Fire Sale, which is just slightly too expensive. The other thing to consider this in Warrior is with skipper stuff. So if you have Armor Vendor and all that other stuff, it's a way to damage your whole board multiple times, much like skipper. So it gives you some much needed redundancy in that deck. But I do think Even Warrior is the best home. And finally, we have Fossilized Kaleidosaur. So 4 mana, 3/4 Undead Beast, gain 2 random bonus effects, and Excavate a Treasure. Seems decent, 4 for 3/4 with 2 keywords. It's probably not that bad. It's probably not that exciting either, but you do get to Excavate a Treasure, really good enough for standard. In Wild, I don't think we're really trying to excavate beyond just that one Paladin Wind Fury Divine Shield card, but certainly good enough for standard. I expect Excavate Paladin to be pretty good. All right, that was all the cards we're getting in Delve into Deepholm. I think that there are a lot of cards in here I'm really excited about. I think some of them kind of, you know, it's a shame about Therazane being so mid, because I've been looking forward to Therazane for years. I think she's really funny. But yeah, I do think that this is going to switch up a lot in Standard specifically, and there's a lot of cool stuff to play in Wild, so I'm looking forward to it. Let me know in the comments what you think about this set, what you're looking forward to playing, if I missed anything cool that you think is going to be really good. Remember to like and subscribe to support the channel, and thank you so much for watching.